Hello, everyone, and welcome to Unscripted. I am Krooked, and this is the series where I take a completely unscripted look at games and give them a 1 through 10 rating. It's Star Wars month. So, again, if you haven't seen my other videos, I am doing a Star Wars video every single day this month. And since there are 31 days in May, that means 31 Star Wars videos and 31 different games. So if you wanted to find out how good a Star Wars game is, this is the month to do it. This is Super Star Wars for the Super Nintendo. I grew up playing this game. This game, Empire Strikes Back, and God, these games were everything to me. And they're notoriously difficult. They're so hard that I've never actually beaten these games. I've cheated in them a lot to get to certain levels, but I've never beaten them. Not only am I playing this, but if you guys want more than just like a review, so if you do decide to play it and you want to actually be good, you can always check out You Can Beat Video Games. He does an awesome walkthrough of this that basically teaches you how to not suck. I don't remember most of what he said, but a lot of it is, just take your time. So just to start, you can't shoot and run at the same time. That's a problem. And you start off as Luke on Tatooine, just kind of killing all the creatures you come across. It's really basic. I remember this one being way, way, way harder than the other ones that followed. Probably because Luke doesn't have a lightsaber in this one. And it's just Star Wars in a way that you didn't really experience back in the 90s. So you're probably wondering, like, well, what the hell is this? None of this is in Star Wars. These are Womp Rats, by the way. And you're right, none of this is in Star Wars, because if they just showed us Star Wars back in video games, we wouldn't have gotten much. We would have had a few levels that we already know about, and that's about it. So they would expand, and they would add other creatures, and game companies had pretty open licenses to do things. So you'd get a lot that doesn't really look great, or doesn't look correct to what we've seen, but it kind of expands on the story a little bit sometimes. And sometimes that even becomes canon, which, when that happens, great. So far, I'm sure you've noticed, with how the game looks, I'm very clearly Luke Skywalker. My health is represented by the lightsaber meter. There's a time. It shows me like what level power my blaster's at, and overall, it's visually a really good game. You can very clearly see everything that's happening. The scorpions look like scorpions, and the flying bird bat things look like flying bird bat things. It looks great. The background is awesome. I can clearly see that this is Tatooine. Overall, the visuals of this game are really, really nice. And for the first game in the Super Nintendo to be like Star Wars-y, I don't know how anyone could have avoided this back in the day. If you like Star Wars and you like video games, just looking at this, you would want to play it. You'd be like, oh man, that is Star Wars, and I want it. In terms of gameplay, it's basically just a side-scrolling beat-em-up, but with a blaster. The enemies are really easy to beat. There's nothing really too fresh or unique here. I am fighting the Sarlacc, though, so that's kind of cool. Die, Sarlacc! It's called the Sarlacc Pit Monster. I like how it has little tendrils, and it's like, I'm gonna wave them at you. The bosses so far look great. I remember this being one of the super hard things about the game, though, is bosses are just insanely difficult. And there's not really much that I can do other than kinda... Okay, so it's going that way. Nothing here drops hearts, so I just have to kind of avoid the rocks. It'll show me the tentacle. That's where it's going to come up at. And then I died, and now I get to restart that entire battle, because these games, like I said, are very, very difficult. How far back do I start? So ideally, according to You Can Beat Video Games, what you want to do in all of these games is upgrade all of your stuff as much as you can. Because if you can get it upgraded, then the little blaster that I have won't be as terrible, and you can actually beat bosses a lot easier. In terms of gameplay, there's not much to the controls. It's jumping, firing, and that's about it. I think later on you get some other things like thermal detonators and stuff, and you can push, like, they have their own specific button, but right now where I'm at, like the slide I just did, the jumping, everything, that's just done with B and Y. Not much else happening here. Very, very basic controls. But it's good, because that means it's open for everyone, and there's not a whole bunch of adjusting that needs to be done if you're not used to the controller. You're just like, oh, cool. Couple buttons, not a lot to learn. It's get in, you can get right in, get into the gameplay. In terms of sound, I mean, listen to it. This sounds like Star Wars. The blasters did sound like a blaster. This sounds a little bit different, but it's not a blaster. Well, okay, it is a blaster, but now it's more of a flame blaster, so slightly different. And I think all the sounds for it are really, really good. It's very clear when you get health. It's very clear when you shoot an enemy. The enemies make noises when they show up. I'd like to hear maybe a contact noise for when your blaster actually connects to something, but since there's not really a whole lot going on screen and you can kind of see it getting hit, you don't really need that as much, but it would be nice to have some confirmation that's doing damage. The Sarlacc lit up, of course, so that was like its confirmation, but most normal enemies, they don't have anything like that. They just kind of die or don't. And in terms of presentation, I mean, this is Star Wars through and through. It is a really, really solid game, but it's held back pretty hard by that difficulty. I'm going to try to get to that Sarlacc one more time here so we can see if I can beat it or if I'm just going to lose the Sarlacc again. And they're relentless on these enemies too, because there's so many of them. But going back to the presentation, you can clearly see how many lives you have, how much life you have, and it's presented really, really well. Like, this game is good in all the right ways that it needed to be. It just has the problem of being so insanely difficult that you're going to get frustrated really quickly. And if you're like me and you couldn't find a place to buy it in the store really easily in the 90s, you were kind of at the mercy of rental stores on getting the game. And then with being at mercy of rental stores, you didn't always beat it in time. And that meant, guess what? You're taking the game back, and then you get to either pay $5 more to re-rent this incredibly frustrating game that you spent a bunch of time that you couldn't beat, or you get to rent something else. So what these games became for me was more of a game where there was nothing else to rent, so I was renting Super Star Wars. Just because of how frustrating they are. Because again, I just lost again. So, with the insane difficulty of this game, it brings it down quite a bit. And just got to point out the sound of the blasters. It sounds like a blaster from Star Wars. But with how crazy hard this is, I can't give it anything more than a 6.5. The game is really fun, and you can probably get pretty far if you're willing to put in the time. If you follow You Can Beat Video Games guides, you can also find out where all the other power-ups are and everything else. However, if you're just trying to go into this blind and play it, you're going to have a really frustrating time because you're going to die. Then you have to go through the whole level again. Then you have to, you know, get to the Sarlacc again just to potentially die again. And it's really frustrating to go through, and honestly, if you're a Star Wars fan, play it. Otherwise, you can probably skip this one and go to one of the later entries in the franchise and probably enjoy it a bit more. So with all that, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. You can also hit that thumbs up if you like what I'm doing. Don't forget to leave a comment to let me know what you think about this game or any other games you want to see me play, or any Star Wars games you want to see me play in this month. You can also subscribe to my Patreon. If you do, there is a shout out to anyone who's subscribed, and you'll see their names in the end credits at the end of the video. And other than that, thank you for watching Unscripted, and I will see you next time.